Well, a busy morning for Mrs Starmer, the leader of the opposition's wife, who hit John Lewis early to measure up red curtains for number 10. Yes, Labour has won control of a string of councils across England and Wales. Among the key council gains, Labour took Rushmore in Hampshire, which is bluer than a Roy Chubby Brown stand-up routine, and a council which the Tories have run since Mick Jagger was a virgin. The real headache for Rishi Sunak is that 6 areas that overwhelmingly voted Leave in the Brexit referendum swung back to Labour, including Hartlepool, Peterborough and Thurrock. And Labour won Blackpool South in the by-election, with an eye-watering 26% swing. Normally, Tory High Command quite like middle-class swingers, but not today. But it seems that those who voted Labour did so without any great enthusiasm. Yes, Rishi Sunak is beginning to look like a species so extinct David Attenborough will make a documentary about him. But replacing Sunak with Starmer is like replacing your rubbish boyfriend with someone even worse, someone with tattoos who rides a motorbike and still lives with his mother. And looking behind the headlines, it's not all great news for Labour. Turnout across the board was anemically low. Where is the fervour, the excitement about a Labour government that we saw in 1997 before the Blair landslide? Other smaller parties did well, particularly the Greens, God help us, and the Liberal Democrats. Remember them? The other winners were independent candidates, proving that much of the public have had enough of everyone. Forget about Tory or Labour. Just the word politician is a turn-off for many. Labour have also been stung by their support for Israel following the October the 7th attacks. Labour saw support dip in some of its traditional heartland areas, with large Muslim populations losing seats in Newcastle and overall control in Oldham. The British Muslim vote is going to be a key electoral factor in the years ahead. And what about Reform UK? Well, as predicted, they've made things worse for the Tories, as election guru Sir John Curtis points out in The Telegraph today. In those areas where Reform fielded a candidate, the Conservative vote fell more quickly than Harry Kane in the penalty box. But whilst things look terminal for Rishi Sunak, let me issue a word of caution. Turnout was low, which means it's all to play for among the don't-knows. In fact, a don't-know Prime Minister leading a don't-know government made up of don't-know MPs would be the most popular administration in 100 years. But here's the point. Governments generally lose by-elections, and whilst local elections should be about potholes, street lighting and bins, they often serve as a chance to give the incumbent a bloody nose. Now, of course, the Tories have suffered more than a bloody nose, but in a few months' time, when the country goes to the polls, will support for Reform UK fall away? And will moderate-minded and undecided voters balk at the idea of listening to Sir Keir Starmer wang on for 5 years? On paper, the Tories face certain defeat at the next election, but the scale of that defeat is yet to be decided. I'd never met a Sir Keir Starmer fan. So why are the Tories standing by and letting him scoop the top prize? Stop the boats, tackle the NHS, sort out that waiting list, turn the economy around, and anything is possible. But right now, those red curtains are heading straight for number 10, unless the Tories pull themselves together. TV news legend Nicholas Owen, ex-BBC radio superstar Liz Kershaw, and the founder of the electoral calculus, Martin Baxter, are my Friday friends. Martin Baxter, what's the headline from today's
I think the headline
results?
is that Labour have got a very large amount of grudging support. Earlier when you mentioned what drinks Labour should be having, I think it's probably not good enough for champagne, but certainly Prosecco.
Right.
And the Conservatives At the worst, it could have been tap water. I think they get an upgrade to filtered tap water.
Yeah.
So it's not quite as bad as it could have been for the Conservatives and not quite as good as could have been for Labour.
Yeah, well, the Tories have got themselves in hot water with red wine in the past, so best to stick to the tap water or maybe the slimline tonic. The bottom line is that you mentioned people have begrudgingly voted Labour in the last 24 hours. I do not feel that this is 1997 and the excitement around Tony Blair.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
that could be right.
In other words,
the
Pope's a Catholic. Bears believe themselves in the word. So do you think if you're Rishi Sunak sat in your number 10 office tonight, is there a chink of hope for him?
There's two chinks, I suppose. A lot of his voters haven't gone to Labour as such. They've gone over to Reform and or the Apathy Party. Mm-hmm. If he can pull those back, if he can make people think there's a reason to vote Conservative, then there could be hope. The figures from the local elections were not as bad as they could have been, and so there's a little bit of hope, or at least that it's not a catastrophe coming down the track. But how does he win back disgruntled Conservatives? Because he's been trying for a year and he's not got very far.